Hey, good evening, everyone. Let's just wait a few more minutes until others join. Okay, welcome everyone to our Mercari PdM meetup. Today's topic will be challenges in UX. So let me first share about our agenda today. So I'll give a brief introduction about Mercari and the role of a PdM at Mercari. Then we'll move into a panel discussion. So we have three panelists with us today, Bruce, Colby, and Kami. Following that, we'll move into a Q&A session and then make some small announcements towards the end. Okay. So just in terms of today's event information, obviously we are facilitating in English. Please do not record this. And also feel free to leave questions anytime. So you can use the YouTube comments functionality. Finally, please feel free to share on Twitter using these hashtags. Okay, first as an icebreaker, perhaps we can, perhaps you guys can share with us where you are watching the stream from today. It'd be great. Hopefully we have members from inside Japan and also around the world. And so we'd love to hear from you. Okay, not many, not many comments so far.
Hey guys, don't be shy.
Well, I think most of, at least the panelists were attending from Tokyo.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves, I think. So as mentioned at the top, I'll be moderating today. My name is David. I'm a product manager here at Mercari. I'm originally from Australia and have been in Japan for maybe 10 years or more. I joined Mercari about 2 years ago to lead our website rebuild project, which we launched earlier this year. Sorry, late last year, rather. Prior to that, oh, we have some comments. So welcome. Looks like we have Polly joining from Tokyo and Mugank, I guess, joining for Japan as well. So welcome to the stream. Yeah, so prior to joining Mercari, I was working at Fast Retailing on Fast Retailing's design system and relaunching Uniqlo.com actually for Japan and Canada. And yeah, currently I'm extremely focused on getting better at golf. Koei, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Satoshi Kobayashi. Please call me Kobe. I'm a product manager in Mercari. So I'm born in Japan, but raised in the New Jersey, US. And prior to the Mercari, I worked in Sony, the PlayStation, launching the PS5 at the San Francisco office. So I just come back from the San Francisco almost a year and a half ago. And then like right after that, I decided to join the Mercari as I'm interested in the more of like the C2C marketplace. And I'd love to, like my off time, I'd like to spend time playing ice hockey, which I've been playing from very young age, and also fishing as well too.
Great, thanks, Kobe. Okay, next let me invite Kemi to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Kami. I'm a product manager at Mercari. I joined Mercari in August of 2020 and moved to Sozo in April of 2021. I'm originally from California and lived in Japan for the past 8 years. I love yoga, board games, and my 2 cats. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kami. And then finally, let's invite Bruce to introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Bruce. I'm also from the US, San Francisco, and I joined Mercari as a new grad almost 4 years ago. So straight out of university in the US, I moved to Japan and I started this job. So most of the Japanese that I speak today, I mostly learned it on the job. PMs have to do a lot of negotiations, so it naturally came with it. And I have a background in psychology, so for me, it's fun to think about what our customers are thinking and how they behave. So yeah.
And not to scare you guys off, because actually Japanese is not a requirement for working at Mercari, but it's certainly.
Yeah, if you want to learn it, you can in this company.
Yeah, we do have support whenever we need as well in this company, which is fantastic. Okay, great. So next, I'd like to give a brief overview of Mercari. I know some of you are joining in Japan, so you're probably familiar with the company Mercari. Obviously, some may be interested in Mercari or interested in moving to Japan. So let me share a little bit about Mercari as a company. Nice to meet you too. So our corporate mission is to create value in a global marketplace where anyone can buy and sell. In terms of how we're going, GMV is basically sales that we say, and MAU is monthly active users. So as you can see here, it's been a real success story in Japan, the Mercari C2C application, growing year on year. We're currently growing at 9% year on year for monthly active users and 12% year on year for GMV or total gross sales. It seems like a great success story, but we still have room to grow. We only have 20.6 million monthly active users, as you can see, but we know from our research that 36 million users are very interested in listing items. And as a matter of fact, we just reached 2.5 billion lifetime listings in December 4, 2021. In terms of a company overview, so Mercari, as I mentioned, started as a Mercari C2C marketplace and had some great success. We then moved into the fintech area with the launch of Merpay, which is a subsidiary company. More recently, we've incorporated a company called Sozo, which is responsible for Mercari shops. Kami will be speaking on that later. And most recently, we're ramping up in the logistics area with Merlogi, and also the crypto area with Mercoin. We also have a separate company, Mercari Inc. in the US, which is also growing very rapidly. And finally, we have a soccer club as well, Kashima Antlers, under the Mercari umbrella. In terms of services that we actually offer to our customers currently, we have Mercari, which is the C2C marketplace, the one on the left there. Inside the Mercari app as well, there is a tab, which is the Merpay tab, which basically is online and offline payments. The third is actually the Mercari. You'll notice that the branding is slightly different, but in the US, that's the Mercari application. Again, it's a C2C marketplace, very similar, but obviously with Western styling or Western sensibilities there. And then finally, we have Mercari Shops, which, as Kami will explain, is also part of the Mercari C2C marketplace in Japan. Okay, let me jump into kind of the role of a PdM at Mercari and probably at most companies, I guess. But generally, you know, a PdM is said to kind of sit in the intersection of UX, tech, and business. At least in Mercari, we do look for candidates with quite a bit of technical expertise. And the reason being is that we work very closely with engineers and EMs and other technical roles in the company. So typically at that in order to thrive, it's helpful if PMs have a technical background, we found. Also, I know this is a stream about UX. We do have a strong experimental culture in Mercari, though. We do like to A/B test almost everything that we do, with a focus on our North Star metric, or other key metrics that our experiments are looking to improve, and that flows down into UX experiments as well. So we do everything basically with a data-driven mindset when we're changing anything about the interface or experience. And then finally, we look for PMs with great business acumen. We don't really have a lot of, I would say, a lot of the product itself is product driven. We don't really have a business side and a product side, so to speak. The product managers are kind of driving these metrics or initiatives themselves, and we look for members with an inclusive mindset as well. We do have a diverse range of stakeholders and also a lot of international employees as well in Mercari. Okay, in terms of how we organize teams, we follow something called a camp structure, and basically at the moment we have about 6 or 7 active camps, and these camps basically execute projects based on product themes. And the idea here is that inside a camp structure, we can deliver value to our customers in a very efficient way. Teams also like it because it gives them autonomy. We call it accountable autonomy. We do want our work to be as transparent as possible, but we do want to empower teams and for them to have a commitment, a reason for being, following a mission, and also follow one of our corporate values, which is go bold. So we do encourage risk-taking in this company, which is fantastic. Finally, we find that a camp structure creates a very safe environment. We do recognize that the building a product is a marathon. We aren't looking for short-term gains here. We do want to encourage, and I think we do a great job of encouraging work-life balance in Mercari. You may or may not be aware that we have a policy as well called Your Choice, which allows you to work wherever you like in Japan. So we have members working in the mountains of Hokkaido, or Kyoto, or other areas around around Japan. And then finally, we do embrace kind of a blameless culture. So it's fine to fail or make mistakes, and provides an opportunity to learn fast and also grow your skill set as well. I won't bore you too much with inside a camp, but needless to say, we have a PM head, an engineering head, design members, which kind of go across teams, as well as QA members. And then we have, basically cross-functional Scrum teams, as you can see here, a PM and an EM working together with back-end, iOS, Android, and front-end developers to create a team that's empowered to do something end-to-end. So yeah, this creates very flexible and comprehensive organization. It gives us the ability to manage resource quite flexibly. And as I mentioned, forming cross-functional teams allows us to deliver value end-to-end in one Scrum team. Yep. And let me jump into kind of some FAQs about that we sometimes receive about the product at Mercari or being a product manager. So some ask us, what about the product maturity in terms of the organization and the product? So as I mentioned at the top, we had really great success in Japan, where we basically maintained a very strong position as the largest C2C marketplace in the country. And we're constantly looking at ways to innovate and optimize our product to increase that monthly active users further. Sometimes we're asked, how are decisions made? Is it a top-down culture? Definitely, I can say it's not a top-down culture. One of the great things about the camp structure is that camps lead initiatives, and they have that autonomy, and that's where that intersection of business as well comes in, where PMs and camps are kind of responsible for business metrics. And then finally, where the PMs fit in the organization. As I mentioned above, PMs are part of the camp structure themselves, so they are very much closely working with engineers and designers, BI members, so analysts, business intelligence, to deliver these epics with that we've deemed as valuable to chase after. Okay, I think I'll stop there, and I think we can move into the panel discussion. So today, as I mentioned at the top, sorry, I didn't mention yet, but we'll have 3 discussion topics today. The first one, integrating Mercari shops, followed by challenges in scalable design, scalable UX design, and then finally, a battle for the constant battle for improving UX, which sounds very exciting. First, I'd like to introduce Kami to share about integrating Mercari shops. So Kami, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for joining today. I'm Kami. I'm one of the product managers working on integrating Mercari shops into the Mercari C2C marketplace. So first, I just wanted to share a bit of context about what Mercari shops is. If you could go to the next slide. Okay, so Mercari shops, as David mentioned, is a service where businesses can sell their products directly to Mercari customers. And we launched this service last year, I think around July. Mercari shops has unique features that are geared towards businesses, such as inventory management, which I'll explain a little bit later. Next slide, please. So there are 2 main areas where you can find shop items inside of the app. The first one is in search. So you can find shop items in all of the different search tabs, but we also have one specific tab just for shop items. This is actually one of the first projects that I worked on when I first joined Sozo last year. It was a pretty exciting project. The second one is in the home shop tab. Here we display curated shop items such as popular shop items or personalized shop items. Next slide, please. So next I wanted to briefly share about the key differences between Mercari item and Mercari shop items. So the UI itself looks pretty similar, except in Mercari shop items, you can see that there's like a narrow black banner on the top that says Mercari shops. Other than that, the main difference is that Mercari shop items have, as I mentioned before, this concept of inventory. So each product listing can have multiple SKUs. And so because of that, each product listing can potentially accumulate a lot of likes per product and a lot of reviews, like the mini tomato on the right there. You can see that it has 85-star reviews and 430 likes, whereas a Mercari item, you can't really have that. So as a buyer, as a consumer, if I'm searching for mini tomatoes and I see both of these listings, I might be more inclined to purchase, Mercari shop items because it seems like it has a lot of positive reviews and it seems maybe less risky to buy it. But the benefit of buying from a Mercari item is that maybe you're the type of buyer that loves getting a great deal or a great discount. So maybe you love haggling. So you can actually directly message the seller and say, hey, I would like this. I would like these many tomatoes, but maybe can you give it to me for 1,000 yen? And so, yeah, you can maybe possibly get it for 1,000 yen. So, it just depends on what kind of buyer preference, I guess, you have. So the fact that we provide different types of buyer experience in one platform, I think, really increases the value of our marketplace because it can cater to a wider consumer need. Next slide, please. So next, I just wanted to briefly share my experience as a PM integrating Mercari shops into an existing product. So it's definitely not as easy as maybe one would imagine. So I just wanted to kind of summarize what those three main product challenges that I experienced as a PM and still experiencing. So the first one is about cross-company collaboration. As a product manager, I worked on different domains where I needed to collaborate across different product teams or different departments and align KPIs. And, I'm sure a lot of product managers have this experience in, different companies. But when you're working in separate companies, I think those challenges can be amplified a little bit. So I needed to make sure that we had a common understanding of what we're trying to achieve together as a group company by aligning KPIs and priorities across, different companies. But like I said, I think these issues are not anything unique to Mercari. And I think there's been a lot of effort to align the roadmap on a group level. So I think that's definitely a good thing. And in terms of the system limitation, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically there is a decision made to have Souzo Mercari system as decoupled as possible so that we can prioritize speed to market, which I think was definitely a good decision. But of course, this leads to impacting the product in a way where sometimes you can't do something that you want to do easily. But I think that's also part of PM life, and you have to make the most out of the constraints that are laid out in front of you. So I just wanted to briefly share some examples about the UX trade-offs. So the image on the left is a little bit small, but it's a screenshot of the purchase history screen. So because of the decoupled system, it's not necessarily easy to share data across the two services. So we actually built our own purchase history in Souzo for Mercari shops. But the users who are already, used to the UX of Mercari app expect that if you purchase an item inside of Mercari app, it would be displayed in the purchase history screen. So we saw a lot of the customers who purchased a shop item but did not see their items displayed in the purchase history screen. They would buy the same item twice and then maybe find out later that it actually went through and then have to cancel it. So in order for us to be able to solve this problem immediately, we had to come up with some, creative or workaround solutions to be able to solve the user's pain point, but not necessarily damage the overall UX. So, we added a link at the bottom of the purchase screen. And so there are a lot of, definitely UX trade-offs that we made throughout the product in order for us to prioritize speed. And so there are a lot of things that we can definitely improve moving forward and a lot of fun problems to solve. But this is just one small example of a UX challenge that I faced as a PM trying to integrate a new service into an existing app. So that's it from me. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, Kami. Yeah, at this point, I'd like to invite anyone to add comments to the YouTube stream, and we can address those as questions directly for Kami if you have them. I have a couple of questions, Kami, if it's okay.
Sure.
So yeah, you mentioned that that there are some UX trade-offs that you've made to kind of enhance the speed to market. Now that you've actually launched shops, I imagine that speed to market consideration has relaxed a little bit. So do you plan to address some of those trade-offs in the future? And if so, what kind of things can we expect from Mercari shops?
Thank you for the question. When we were discussing these workaround solutions as phase 1, we were also in parallel thinking about what we can do to improve this UX in the future. And so currently we are aligning the roadmap with the PM that's in charge of the purchase history screen, and trying to make sure that we can provide a more seamless UX for our customers.
Yeah, great. Makes a lot of sense. So you're also, you think short term, but you also have a medium and long term plan.
Yeah.
Mind. Great. And then I think it was on the second slide, maybe. Let me go back. Yeah, here you mentioned that B listings can be seen from the search results page. So, and you also mentioned that the systems are quite decoupled. So I'm wondering what challenges existed in integrating search from a UX perspective and a technical perspective as well.
Yeah. So I said that we try to make it as decoupled as possible, but there are critical areas in the app where it was necessary for us to integrate in order for us to validate the product itself. And search is one of those areas. So this is one of the cases when we did some integration. But of course, it was very difficult at times to be able to negotiate or find the right balance between how much of shop items we should display in search, and at the same time providing a fair and objective marketplace. And so, of course, we have very smart and talented search PMs who helped me a lot in trying to find that right balance. But a lot of times I didn't have any data to really base that judgment on. So we had to make a lot of assumptions and simulate a lot from past data of C items. But we had clear guardrail metrics in order for us to monitor to make sure that we don't detrimentally affect our revenue. So by monitoring it, we were able to, continuously test our hypothesis and improve, our ranking page so that it doesn't affect the UX as much. We don't want to show items that people don't want, right? So,
yeah, without giving too much away, I assume that you're constantly optimizing
exactly
that kind of balance, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. Any questions or comments for Kami from the stream viewers? If not, yeah, I'd like to warmly thank Kami for sharing those insights with us. So thanks very much, Kami.
Thank you, guys.
And next, let me invite Colby into the stream to share about challenges in scalable UX design. So Colby, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Colby. I'm leading design system team in the Medicare as a PdM. Today, I would like to share some of the challenges that we're facing in creating the scalable UX design. Next page, please. So before jumping to the challenges, I would like, as like the modern software companies do, we also have the design system so that we can ship the body to the customer's hand in fast as possible with the unified design. As many design systems do, we provide the design guideline. And we also provide the design token and also the reusable component that support the accessibility, such as color contracts or the voiceover. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's jump into the some of the challenges we are facing pretty much constantly. So the first challenges is new design pattern. It's a very common that the designer will come up with a new design pattern or the unique design for their new feature. It's very natural that designer to be creative and come up with a new unique design. But that will lead to the sacrifice the time to the market. And also, if the design is too unique, there might be the chance that the customer required the much more learning curve to get familiar with the new design. So it's really important to maintain a good balance between coming up with a new design versus using the existing design so that we could ship the body to the user's hand in fast as it can, so that we could tap into the customer's feedback. Next slide, please. So second challenge that we constantly facing is so designer tend to create the UX guideline based off the ideal UX, which most of the time they are not fully aware of the holistic view, especially with the technical limitation. So what this lead into is it going to create the inconsistency on our platform. So it's really important to PM to get involved in the guideline discussion, so that we could like fit into some of the technical limitation that could exist. Next slide, please. So the last challenge that I want to introduce today is we have too many options. So as David mentioned, over the years, our service has been growing really, really fast, which lead into the more customer segment. To satisfy those like specific customer segment, we've been adding more option or the feature to the customers. But these make the UX complicated, as the customers need to choose from many different options. And actually, so if you go into the internally for the component level, so these kind of given more option is making the component very, very complicated, as we need to provide a more configurable option on the single component that it makes it really, really the API to be complicated. So the oftentimes how we kind of solve this issue is we break it down to the more to different component. But having too many similar components, it also could lead to the product team designer to pick the right component for their use cases. So we need to carefully balance how much option we provide into the single component versus we come up with a similar component as much as can. Yeah, so that's the challenge that I wanted to share today.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Kobe. Very interesting stuff. I noticed that we had a question from Mugant from the previous presentation. perhaps we could address that first, and then we can jump into Q&A for Colby as well. So if you do have some questions for Colby, please go ahead and add to the comments now. But let's go ahead and perhaps Kami, you could have a shot at this question. So Mugant asks, how much percentage of jobs in PM role involves a system integration?
What percentage of jobs in PM role in Sozo, maybe? Or
probably overall. So I mean, you talked a lot about you know, system integration. Yeah, you probably don't have much visibility on this, but given that we do have cross-functional teams, we're typically working in general. Okay. Kemi, do you want to take a shot at it?
I think there's not really a dedicated, like as a PM, I work on many different things, and system integration is one part of it. So I would say it's like a balance of doing like UX and also system. I think it's pretty interchangeable.
Yeah, it's also I would say that it's highly dependent on the project and the area. So something kind of back-end heavy, like our transaction systems or the teams that work on transactions are actually more back-end heavy than front-end. Whereas some teams who are working for, you know, optimization of personalization, you know, the definition of system integration here is a little vague, but you know, you can imagine that we're trying to deliver end-to-end value as a single team. So you know, integrating back-end and front-end is something that happens on every feature. Integrating back-end and back-end is something that's a little bit more rare, I would say. We do try to keep a decoupled architecture as much as possible with our microservices.
Yeah, I hope we were able to answer your question. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thanks, Kami. Okay, so maybe we can jump into some questions for Colby. Thank you, Mugan. Okay, yeah, Colby, I had a couple actually. So yeah, could you share a little bit about, you know, you mentioned kind of like having this balance of, you know, working with designers and whether to introduce a new like custom component or like a fancy new design versus utilizing a reusable component that we already have. You mentioned, you know, the learning curve and other things like that. What are the conversations like, or what are the considerations that's happening between a designer and a PM, and also a developer, I would imagine as well? Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, so the first thing I normally typically do is I ask the question whether the existing solution won't solve their problem, so that to make sure that they have considered the existing solution or not. And suppose it could solve the problem by the, just a little change in our design systems component, then we encourage them to use our component by us accepting that the changes. Suppose it cannot solve the problem with the existing component, we still are going to consider whether it makes sense to handle that component in design system side. Like typically, like what we do is whether that that component they need is whether it's going to be benefit the other team or not.
So sometimes you will reject, a component for the design system if it's not reusable enough.
Right. Like. Exactly. But basically, like, especially like in a more like experimental stage, like I encourage the team to utilize the existing solution as much as possible, so that they could ship the product much faster.
Something like rapid prototyping.
Yeah, exactly. And once we get the validated, there's enough demand to the feature, then they could work on like coming up like more fancy kind of design.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kobe. If there are no other questions, I guess I have time for maybe one or two more. But yeah, you mentioned kind of like, a designer will create an ideal guideline, not knowing about kind of some technical limitations that exist, maybe in the back end or something. Can you share like an example? I'm not sure if it's so clear what you mean by like ideal UX versus the technical limitation.
Sure. So the reason recently I actually encountered is that the disable state on the button. They actually the designer have defined in the guideline that if the screen is known, to keep that button active, even though the required field is not inputted from the customers. So that so intention was to provide the feedback where is the required field is not inputted from them yet. So I understand it's the UX is it's ideal, and we like to make that that UX happen as much as we can. But if that error is handled in the server side instead of on the front end in locally, that same UX cannot be happen. So so what I ended up discussing with the designer is, for that use case, I mean, we kind of keep that implementation because it's an ideal UX. But in the guideline, we kind of modify it so that it could apply to the much more many use cases as it can.
Sure.
So that,
yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're dealing with a back-end limitation where potentially the error comes back as a general error rather than a specific field. So we cannot provide, the specific feedback on the required input or something like that, or the reason why. I guess the required would be client-side validation, but when we have a error on server-side validation, it would be difficult to realize the ideal UX, right?
Yeah,
I see.
exactly.
Okay, great. And I think maybe we have time for one more, which is close to my heart. But basically, you talked a little bit about kind of like complicated component API or the interface of a component. So offering too many options when configuring a component. So the one on the screen here, actually, you've got all these different optional slots. So kind of what is the the balance or the trade-off that you're considering there to find that, like, what is too simple or what is too complicated, and where do you draw the line?
Yeah. So if we make that strict component, then it potentially could simplify the API, and it would also mean we could maintain the good consistency, as it's very strict. And but but the downside of the strict component is we cannot satisfy many use cases that the product that many product needs. So what ended up, if it's making too strict, then it's going to increase the team to come up with a custom component.
The product
So,
team.
yeah, product team. So, and if we make it too flexible API, then it's going to lose the consistency as there's many flexibility and freedom that product team can do, can potentially could make. So we kind of need to take the balance of it. And the typically, like what I normally do is, if it's like commonly the product team can maintain the consistency, or they are willing to make the consistency, then we give the freedom as much as we can. But something that normally going out of hand, we trying to make it strict is strict API.
Right. Yeah, I guess we're a little bit different to say something like material design, which is designed to make thousands of different, applications with thousands, hundreds of thousands of different use cases, right? So
this is actually a constant battle or the discussion that we're having with the team like right now. So this is a difficult problem to be solved.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Kobe. Oh, looks like we have another question from Mugang. Thank you so much for all the questions. Please keep them coming. Perhaps I'll add the other panelists here. Okay, so the question is there any course suggested for breaking into UI UX PDM role, especially for PDM working on backend? Bruce, do you have any insight on this one?
Yeah. So for this one, I think this is a really interesting question because it definitely implies that maybe you're looking to experience how it's like to be a PM, and you want to understand the skills required to break into the field. And this question, I think, is really personal to me because, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I started as a new grad in this company, not knowing anything about what a PM is and how a PM works. So I think for me, I had the same exact question for my superiors, like, what can I do to become a PM? I have no idea what a PM does. I don't know what a good PM is supposed to do. How am I supposed to be good at UI and UX? A lot of it is definitely from experience. So I think more importantly than learning something academically or learning from an online course of how to be a PM, I think it's honestly, if you have the opportunity in maybe, I don't know if you're currently working in a IT company as an engineer or not, and maybe you are, try to kind of understand the purpose of what you're developing and kind of like the importance of it. This is often what PMs do is they don't just manage the project, but they kind of try to understand what is the value of what I'm making and then try to see towards the end how it can be developed, pretty much managing the project until the end. So I would say if there's any opportunity wherever you are currently, try to break into the experience of it if you can, in any way you can. Maybe asking some PM friend or, but this is just my opinion about this.
Yeah, even an idea is like doing exercises like crazy eights, where you get like a sheet of paper folded into 8, and then kind of imagine what the front end feature is that the whatever back end service you're working on actually translates into a UI and how you would design it. It's interesting exercise for sure.
Yeah. Also, I think it's really important to see as a lens of the customers. So like whatever that you're building, like trying to imagine what kind of impact or to the customer's experience. it's really, really important. So you kind of like constantly like need to like look into the customer's feedback, but also you gotta use the services yourself as much as you can, so that you could kind of see as a customer's lens.
Another idea is like doing a side project yourself, where you're actually forced to consider UI and UX of your own side project. Anyway, with in the interest of time, perhaps we can jump forward into the constant battle for improving UX. So let me pass off to Bruce. And thanks again, Colby, for the great presentation about scalable UX design. Very interesting.
All right. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Bruce again, and I'm going to be presenting about the constant battle for improving UX, specifically within the context of this company. But improving UX is a constant battle in a lot of modern IT companies. This isn't something that is specific to Mercari. This is something very common among the best companies in the world. So basically, I'm going to be presenting a business case today, something that an example of the experience that my team personally had, and hopefully this demonstrates this theme here of why improving UX is a constant battle. It's not necessarily something that is just created once and then you have a great idea and that's it. It's much more than that. So we can go on to the next slide. I want to present one more time the kind of structure of the company, just so the context is very clear of how we generally work. Basically, again, as David mentioned earlier, we have this camp structure where we have groups of teams, and these groups of teams, they all work towards different themes. So for example, let's say this camp A here, there's like 3 teams inside there, and they work on personalizing the experience for the user more. They make sure that the user is recommended things that they're interested in. Maybe camp B is an entirely different topic. Maybe they work on trust and safety, right? So they want to make sure that whenever the user is making purchases, it's a very safe and secure, legal kind of experience. So depending on which team that you're in, you work on very different priorities. But of course, the core of product managers, we make products, and so the products are designed to have the end user as the customer. So we want to make sure that UX is at the core of what we do, but it's never that simple. So this is just an example of the context that you might be working with. And the important thing to note is, depending on where you are, you might have different priorities. So we can move on to the next slide. These are kind of the different kinds of priorities that you might have to think about when you're a product manager. There's a lot of different things. It's not just UX. After you figure out the UX, okay, you say, this is going to make the UX better. Is this going to have business potential as your product? Is this aligned with the company priorities? How long is this going to take to develop? Is this legal compliant? Does this follow the design standard that Colby was mentioning earlier? All of these factors. And this is just the most common ones. There might be other factors that you have to consider. But generally speaking, there's a lot more to consider than just UX when you make a product. In the ideal world, if our job was only to make the customer's experience better and not having to care about anything else, that would make our jobs much more simpler. But the reality is not like that. And so the business case that I'm going to present today is going to demonstrate kind of the complexity of a real situation that a product manager, especially in our company, might have to deal with. But again, remember, depending on which team you're in, your priorities might differ. So for example, let's say that if you're in the personalization camp, you might be prioritizing user experience and business potential. But if you were in the trust and safety camp, you might be prioritizing more of the legal. Is this going to be safe for the user to purchase, or is this going to be following Japanese regulations more than maybe the UX sometimes? So yeah, we can move on to the next slide, and I'm going to present the kind of business case that we had. So we as a team, I work in one of the UX teams, and basically we had this task of recreating the offer experience for users. So for you guys, just a recap, as you know, our service is a customer to customer marketplace app, right? So we have people who, buy and sell things to each other. And because people buy and sell things to each other, naturally, there's a lot of people who like to negotiate for prices. A lot of people, they only want to purchase an item if it's only this amount, this price. So because of that, we had this feature called Offer, where we allowed users to privately send offers to sellers for items that they wanted to buy. So Offer V1, we call it V1 because this was the first version of the offer, first version of the feature. Essentially, this feature, it closed down. This was made in like 2017, and this feature was closed. I'll explain why in a bit. But basically, the flow of the feature, it worked like this. On the right side, you can see the buyer sends the offer, and then the seller accepts the offer. And after the seller accepts the offer, the buyer, they have to come back to the app and then finish the purchase. They have to pay. If they don't do this, then nothing happens. Even though the seller accepted the offer, nothing happens. So going into the next slide, I can kind of explain the context of why this was an issue. And this was the reason why the offer V1, the first version of the feature, was closed. Essentially, we can frame this up in a problem, hypothesis, and solution framework. This is often what you need to do as a product manager if you want to make new products. You want to make sure that it makes sense, it's logical. So the problem with Offer V1 was that there was a lot of customer complaints. There was a lot of buyers that they sent offers to the seller, but in the end, they would back out. They wouldn't make the purchase in the end, even after the seller accepted the offer. So a lot of sellers would get this false sense of hope, and they'd be incredibly disappointed. So they would complain to our customer service saying that, they don't understand why the buyers would do this. And as well as that, the Offer V1 feature was also not profitable. And profitable, I can explain more in depth later. But basically, it wasn't making enough revenue for the company to justify its kind of maintenance. So the hypothesis that we had, how can we make this better? How can we make this better? So our hypothesis was, if all offers were sent by buyers and they were required to become purchases, then the unpurchased offer customer complaints would be entirely eliminated and the feature would become profitable. The reason is because if all of the offers were forced to become purchases, then they would turn into transactions, and then the company, generates more revenue from that. So the point is that we're hoping that would become profitable, but also that it solves the problem of the sellers where they have buyers that suddenly back out. So we had this solution where we created the version 2 of the feature. We called it Offer V2. And the main difference of this, the solution is we were going to design a system where it would automatically purchase the item for the buyer if the offer was accepted by the seller. So the buyer does not need to come back to the app after they send the offer. It can automatically turn into a purchase as long as the seller accepts. And so this is what we wanted to give a try. And going into the details of Offer V2, you can go to the next slide. We had to reconsider everything one more time. So again, when making a product, we had to consider all these different factors. We had to make sure the user experience was better. Making sure the user experience is better is considering, does it seem understandable to the user when they first see the UI? Do they understand what it's for? That's where it comes into the UI and UX. We had to come up with a lot of different UX new designs, and we had to design a new service for this because in the back end, this is something that requires a lot of data to be stored. Like how much the item was originally priced at and how much the buyer wants to purchase it for. There was a lot of different factors that we had to consider when planning out this feature, but in the end, we managed to get everything sorted out. We had the whole feature planned out. This, required us to have all new screens, a lot of different error handlings, new UX flows, revamped designs, and all that. And everything in total, it took over 1 year of resources and effort to get everything done. But for Offer V2, what happened at the end? So the next slide, you'll see the results of this huge effort that our team went through. In the end, the feature actually failed. So it was kind of different from Offer V1 in the sense that this time, the Offer V2 feature, it was essentially an overall business KPI results. It was a little bit negative. And so we had to close the feature because essentially the feature was used by some users successfully, but the amount of usage as well as some KPIs going negative could not justify the amount of resources that we put into it for an entire year of effort. Basically, as the feature was in the form that it was not enough to release fully. But it wasn't wasted effort. We had a lot of learnings, and this is where the important part is the project failed, but the point isn't that it's a lost cause. It's something that can be iterated upon. We had some learnings. We realized that as it says here, 44% of all offers sent by buyers were successfully converted into purchases. This essentially means that out of 100 offers sent to sellers actually accepted 44 of those, and those were automatically turned into purchases, which means for sellers, it was actually an incredibly good conversion rate. We also discovered there was some design flaws from the data, and we also realized there could have been a lot better development processes, how we could have released the feature better for next time. And so there was solid reasoning for us to try this again. And this is kind of the theme of what I'm trying to demonstrate here today, is that within the culture of our company, we can go to the next slide. We have this kind of culture of learning from our mistakes, essentially, and making sure that we can use those learnings to try again. This is one of my favorite quotes from there's a product founder, he's a company founder in Silicon Valley. He says that innovation is very much a function of the number of experiments we can run. And this essentially means that, innovation isn't something that just suddenly pops up in your head and then, we create this great idea and we're going to be successful. It didn't happen for anybody like that. It didn't happen for Steve Jobs. It didn't happen for, Jeff Bezos. All successful innovations take time. And that's pretty much what we get from constant iterations, doing things over and over until we try and we keep learning and we keep making it better. And so basically, product managers at our company, we can expect to lead many experiments like this for millions of daily users are affected. And at the end of the day, the hardest part of our job is basically it's finding the right problems to work on, and then having the perseverance and how you'd say, what's the right word? Perseverance and kind of dedication to work towards making it better with the right solution. So yeah, that's why all this it's a constant battle, but it's very, there's not a day that it's boring. So yeah, PMs at our company are all very brave warriors, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Just on that, how often are experiments, run by PMs at Mercari on any given day? Would you say?
Yeah. So this is gonna be similar to my previous context I gave. Depending on which team you're in, you might have different responsibilities, and you might not be So for example, I know that Murugang, he mentioned that there might be a PM in backend. Maybe they might not run as many experiments. They might be working more towards, microservices or system integration. But a PM within a UX team, like I guess myself, you could run anywhere from like, I don't know, like 10 experiments or so per 10 or 20 maybe per quarter. There's a lot of experiments, and this one is kind of an outlier. This is not a normal case. This experiment, which is 1 year long, there's a lot of experiments that are like 1 week or like 2 weeks, and you can release it out to users. So there's a lot to do. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Bruce. And finally, I just wanted to clarify, what do you mean by, you mentioned like V1 was not profitable. What do you mean by profitability here?
Yeah, so V1, so essentially offer V1, there was 2 factors to consider, or maybe 3 factors actually. So one thing is the user experience was okay, but it wasn't perfect. So there were people that used it, but there was a lot of people that also complained about it, and that's why the UX wasn't perfect. But the business side of it, basically, because of all these complaints from the users, there was a lot of customer support inquiries where the customer support agents would constantly contact our engineers and say, hey, we're having problems with this offer feature again. Can you fix this? And we had so many of these inquiries that the engineers or the teams kind of wondered, is this really even worth maintaining? And then we took a look at the data, and we found that actually offer V1 was used maybe like less than 1% from users. So it was deemed not profitable, considering the maintenance costs, the customer support agent costs, and the amount of usage it had. It wasn't, it wasn't profitable in that sense.
I see. So you're not just balanced. You're not just looking at our commission, for example, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great. So with that, I'd like to thank Bruce. Very interesting presentation as well, and great follow-up questions, follow-up answers rather. We do have some time now, probably about 5 to 10 minutes for some more Q&A. So we have one from the stream from Polly. So Polly asks, for an engineer who is looking into moving into a PdM role, do you have any suggestion for key focus areas? Kami, would you like to tackle this one?
Sure. I was working on implementation related projects early on in my career, but I was never really an engineer. But from what I've seen and what I've noticed as product managers, I think there are definitely a lot of areas where having a technical background definitely helps in trying to solve customer pain points and customer problems. And so, especially in Mercari, for example, like search-related products that's very technical, or recommendation, or like transactions, things that are more back-end heavy, definitely it's a plus to have that kind of technical knowledge. And a lot of the PMs working in Mercari also used to be engineers as well. So I would definitely say those kind of back-end heavy related products would be a good starting point.
Yeah, certainly. We also have like a client architecture group as well, for example, where we look at the libraries, maintenance, and other things that are kind of overall scaffolding out the application itself. So what performance improvements are possible, other things where an engineering background is almost vital to work on those areas. Does anyone else have anything to share here?
Yeah, I guess in general, as like what we kind of like look into the product manager is like more of like a holistic skill set. Like you got to be able to look into the customer focus, strategic thinking, communication, the leadership skills, like many things, right? I mean, so it's really important to cover that kind of like that skill set as a PM as more like holistically.
Yeah, definitely. There's not many roles in the world quite like a PM that demand so much from one person. Okay, great. Just in the interest of time, maybe we can move on to Damien. Hi, Damien. Welcome. Let me share this one. So Damien asks, how do you decide whether a feature should be closed or improved? Very, very good question. Who would like to tackle this one? Maybe Bruce.
Sure.
You recently closed a feature, so
Yeah. I closed it, so yeah. By the way, it wasn't like a single. Okay, so this is going into the context of how we close features. Oftentimes, when you close a feature, it depends on the size of it, right? So let's say that it's a super small feature. That's enough for one PM to make the decision. But if you're closing a huge feature that took a whole year of effort, that's something that you have to escalate to multiple parties because it was so expensive. So you want to make sure that you're making the right decision. And so this one for let's just say, for example, it's offer. Basically, this one, how do we decide if it should be closed or improved? Using this one as an example, we had learnings from the experiment to show that there were things that we could have improved, and essentially the cost as well, how much effort we took to build the system for it. The system, by the way, is still existing, so it can be reused. And so given the context, this is very case by case, but the PM has to consider all the different factors when considering the feature experiment. And essentially for offer v2, let's use that again as an example, is when we understand that it could be a core piece of UX for the customer's experience. We are a marketplace app. It makes sense that loads of people like to negotiate prices. If it's important for the UX, and we had some learnings to improve it, and the system could be reused, so we wouldn't need so many resources to reproduce another experiment, it makes sense to say, we don't need to permanently close this. We can try another thing. We can try again. But in the opposite, let's say the opposite case. Let's say you didn't learn anything from your previous experiment. Let's say it's going to be another year of effort to try again. And let's say that maybe it's not that important for the UX. Maybe customers really don't actually like to use this kind of feature. Then that's when you say, okay, we should probably close this. It was a good try, but it's not worth trying it again. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Bruce. Damien, does that help you? I hope so. But certainly, yeah, I can also speak to that there are certain like mechanisms that we build that we can then optimize or tweak or run hundreds of different algorithm experiments utilizing the same backend service, for example.
Oh, one more thing. I think this is also really important, but we have to make sure that our products, especially if they take a lot of resources, they have to be aligned with the company's mission. For example, let's say the company right now is working towards security measures because there was a huge incident, and we want to make sure that we focus all our resources on the security incident. These are the times when you try to propose a different thing that's completely irrelevant to the mission, the company would deprioritize what you're trying to propose. So like, again, let's say there's a huge security incident and you're saying, hey, I want to do the offer feature right now. I want 1 year of resources right now. In that case, it would say, we would have to delay the feature for later. Or no, this is not the right time to do the feature because it doesn't make sense with what the company is trying to do right now. So company context is important for making decisions as a PM as well. Kind
of leads into Mogang's next question about how we negotiate with management, and I guess here management backlash if an experiment fails. I think there is absolutely no backlash as long as there's been no negligent activity, I guess. But we do embrace failure. As I mentioned at the top, we have this blameless culture. We have, an experimentation culture. We encourage people to go bold as one of our corporate values. And going bold means, taking calculated risks. And a risk is a risk. Sometimes it doesn't pay off, right? So I think it's kind of a good thing if you can find some learnings from a failed experiment. Bruce's quote also is quite telling here. It's a function. Innovation is a function of the number of experiments we can run. So really, what we want to be doing is encouraging as many experiments as possible. And if we were to kind of have backlash, we would be doing the opposite of encouraging, free experimentation. We do, of course, only roll out to certain, thresholds of the users when we're experimenting. So we can, through that mechanism, like maintain or like de-risk our experiments. So if we do fail, it's not a catastrophic failure or something like that. And yeah, most of the customers don't even know, when something's being experimented or not. So yeah, anyone else want to add anything to that?
I really want to add on something to this. I think Murugan, I'm kind of concerned that he asked this question, and maybe he has experienced something like this before. I don't know. But I think managerial backlash for certain things like that, it sounds a little bit like office politics, and I think that's the opposite of it's not very logical, I think. And I think our company, the way that we work is that we make sure that we're doing things for a reason and not because of, emotion, so to speak. So again, like David was explaining, logically, it makes sense that before you start an experiment, before you push out a product, you have no idea. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea if it's going to succeed or not. Even the, most experienced executives, they have no idea, because that's what an experiment is. It's trying something that you have a hypothesis for. Maybe there's a higher percentage chance this might succeed, but you never know. There is no guarantee. So because there is no guarantee, it's always a chance. It doesn't make sense to have managerial backlash if it fails, so to speak. Because if it's by chance, it can't be anybody's fault, so to speak. And you're working with the team, and the culture that we have here is everybody is trying to do their best. And that's the best we have. If it fails, it fails. What did we learn? And then move forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Bruce is right. We encourage risk-taking behavior. We reward it. It's in our like ladder for our ranks. So as you, it's specifically mentioned, taking a bold risk or a calculated risk will be rewarded as well. But yeah, there are certain things to de-risk risks, which is also expected. So we do have experiment design documents that we prepare. We do prepare a hypothesis, what our expected results are, our backup plans for if we start an experiment and some of our guardrail metrics start like suffering quickly, how to turn off an experiment, etc. So we prepare to succeed and fail. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the stream? I think we've covered pretty much everything so far. I think we have time for maybe one more. If not, do any of the panelists want to say any final words? Okay. I'd just like to thank the panelists for joining today, and also everyone on the stream for attending today. We do as is being shared in the comments right now, obviously we holding this event because we are hiring PMs. Hopefully we've done a good job to kind of entice you to come work for us and build your skill set in a great environment here, I think. So if you are interested, please scan this QR code on your screen. I think we're going to share the links for some JDs as well, job descriptions. So I'll leave this on the screen for a few more seconds. And then last but not least, I hope you had fun. I hope it was interesting content for you. We do want to keep improving how we run these events. So it will be really appreciated if you can fill out a survey for us and give us some feedback so we can improve for next time. But yeah, thank you all for joining us, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks again.
You guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.